Welcome, everybody, to the Driven to Succeed Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host today, Brett LaCoy, and we have Brandon, the normal host, as our very special guest. And today, we're going to be talking about raising rates, the Fed, everything that goes into interest rates. Brandon, in the climate we're in right now, how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, we're really going to dive down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, this is going to be a big rabbit hole.
So, obviously what has dominated the discussion over the last year, we went from transitory inflation to don't worry about it to like, well, it's stickier than we thought. Now it's sticky.
And now it's sticky.
And there's a lot of theories, a lot of this. But, ultimately it comes down to we have to go by what the Fed's going to say, right?
Right. Because they were saying earlier, this is what everybody was predicting, was Q3, we were going to start seeing a reduction in interest rates.
Yeah. You know why?
Please tell me.
So there's a few things, right? The core CPI, they were, trying to bring that down. Inflation, right? Mm-hmm. Consumer products.
So the CPI,
consider pricing index, right?
Consumer pricing index, and maybe in a little bit we should go over what that is, just for the folks that don't know what that is, just as a way for everybody to understand.
Right, we will. But you got a few of these big reports, so like GDP reports, payroll reports, and so your job reports, So not only you have these factors that are contributing to a higher inflationary environment, right? Mm-hmm. They thought the pendulum was going to swing a lot further in a shorter period of time, right? So that's where 6 months ago they're like, yeah, we should probably see lower rates by the end of this year, right?
Right.
And the Fed kept saying, okay, we went 75 basis points a month. 50 the next time they raised, and then 50 and 50, and then 25, and so forth. And then they said, okay, we're going to put a pause in June, right?
Right.
And then the July report comes out, so they hike it again. And then they said, well, one or two more this year yet, and maybe even can't even count them out for next year. And all because these reports that are coming in, and they get revised. They just revised the second quarter of payroll. It was off by 300,000. Right, so it's interesting to see how this stuff works. But when, the reason why that they've just been going up is because of the core inflation, right? And they want to get it back to 2% inflation.
Right.
That's really, really good. And so they were off. Like all these people that were predicting lower rates and all this, they were off because they did not expect so-called employment numbers to be as good as they are, right?
Right. So does that mean that the economy is doing too good?
Well, when they measure it in pure just numbers like that, that's what it looks like. Okay. But I would challenge a lot of people on that, because a lot of people are like, well, wait a second, like, I'm a single mom. I'm having a hard time eating and I work full time, and like I can't buy as much food as I did before. Gas is higher, my rent goes up, and all this stuff is going up. So you ask a lot of people, and it's not that way. But if you look at pure numbers of, okay, we had GDP and we had employment growth and had these and we're hitting these markers, the Fed says, hey, we got to keep raising rates.
Right, but didn't we have huge tech layoffs earlier this year?
We've had layoffs across the board. You just had Yellow, one of the biggest trucking companies, go bankrupt, right? Right. Which a trucking company went bankrupt. People lost their pensions, right? So, it's it's funny. The Fed is very reactionary, right? I joke about it. I heard this and I use it all the time. Is the Fed is going 65 miles an hour and looking in the rearview mirror. Right. They're always looking at data in the past, right? And I think they should be looking more at what is going to come. They obviously didn't do very well during COVID, right? So yeah. So there was COVID. They came in and bought bonds. So we're going to get into talking about bonds here shortly. Yes. What that does to the rates. Sure. But they came in and put $40 billion a month, I believe, that they were buying in bonds.
It was a lot.
when they did that, that pushed the yield spread down, which pushed rates down. And you're already at like a 0% rate in the first place, right?
Right.
Today we're at 5.5.
Real quick, for the listeners at home, can you explain what a yield spread is?
Yes.
Okay.
So the yield spread is going to be, so when you have your Fed rate, like right now it's 5.5.
Okay.
Okay. And that's on the 30-year fixed. Now, when you say it's uniform mortgage-backed securities as a 30-year fixed, and that's 5.5%, because that's safe haven for bonds, right? And then you also have like a 10-year US Treasury note, right?
Right.
So money flows into these bonds for long-term investment, right? 30-year, 10-year, and they're safe havens. Well, when we went from 0 to 5.5, of what the Fed rate is, and we did that in like literally like a year, right? Technically closer to probably, I suppose, 16, 17 months. You have all these homeowners that refied during COVID because we had 2 years of low rates.
Right.
Extremely low rates. I mean, rates people were getting like 2.5%, 3%. So you have the majority of homeowners that own, like 65% of homeowners have a mortgage at 3.25% fixed for 30 years or less. That's a ginormous number, right? That feeds into our inventory problem, because now when you're talking about rates that are 7+, right?
Right. It's really hard to leave that really nice.
Well, your payments double when you try to upgrade your house.
Right.
And that didn't happen before. You could take a couple $100,000 in equity out of your house, get a new house, upgrade, and have the same payment. Now you're taking that $200,000 if you sell, getting the new rate, and your payment's doubling because you're trying to go that much more house because the inventory and the rising cost of the homes have gone up so much, right?
Okay.
So the people that can do it right now and are doing it, there's a couple different segments right now, right? So you got the first-time home buyers, you got the existing home buyers, and then you have investors, right? So you got the wealthy that are buying homes to rent because, hey, what better asset than property, right?
There is none.
Correct. So over 30-year, decades long, your investment in properties are going to go up, and the wealth has always been driven by your asset and properties, right? So you got wealthy buying homes, you got first-time home buyers that are buying homes. Well, their money doesn't go as far as it used to, right? I mean, the median home before, I think it was June of 2020, the median home was $313,000 in the U.S.
Okay.
That's price, $313,000. The income to purchase that home was $55,000.
Right.
Okay. Now this is 2.5 years later. If I'm recalling the right numbers, maybe that would have been beginning of 2021 even. So we're 2 years later now. Median home price is $416, and the income to buy that $416. So we went up $100,000.
Right.
Okay, in 2 years, median home price went up $100,000. The income to buy that $416 you'd think would be $20,000, $30,000 more. It's double. It's $104,000. Not quite double, but $104,000 it takes to buy that home. Which I think this could be a month ago, so it might even be like 110 now.
It could be even more now because the rate's going up.
Because the rate has gone up in the last week, last 3 weeks. So you have this very, this inflationary event. And this is what I don't understand. This is why I think the majority of us are not economists, but it still doesn't make sense. Like why raising rates is going to, stop the home prices from going up. When there's no inventory, those prices are going to go up.
It's still even. Because
there's still people. And there's a huge pent-up demand to buy homes. Huge. People want to buy a new home, right? They're just waiting. What are they? They're waiting for two things: a bubble, housing bubble,
which is not going to happen,
right? And interest rates to come down,
right?
So
which might happen.
Well, we're hoping that Q2 of 2024 rates really start to come down.
Q2 of 2024.
Q3 and Q4 of next year, I think, we're going to be seeing people refinancing Q3, Q4. Some people might go early. I don't think that's a good idea. I think we'll see how it plays out, but you definitely don't want to go too early.
You don't want to go too early. There is risk, though, with trying to time the market, too.
100%. You never know what's going to happen. But obviously, we're lenders. We have our finger on the pulse. We'll be talking to our clients and so forth and walking through that. But
absolutely.
But, there's models that predict us back in the 4s in 2 years. Okay?
Right.
So in my opinion, we need to get to 5.5, 5.75 rate for existing homeowners to say, okay, I can trade this in for a new, right? Right. But there's a vast majority of homeowners like, I'm going to cash flow my house, right? I got a 2.75 30-year fixed rate on it. My payment's $1,800. I can rent this house for $2,600 or $3,000, depending on the area. Yeah. 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, beautiful yard.
Absolutely.
You can rent that house all day long, right?
Absolutely. And that's another part of it too, is the need for rent is going up as well. Mm-hmm. And with these higher interest rates, because there are still investors who are buying, they're going to be charging more than what it was. I mean, it used to be back in the day where it was like, oh yeah, renting is way more expensive than a mortgage. And well, it still is, but now it's even more expensive. The days of finding $1,000 apartment are darn near gone. I mean, you can find them, but
depending on your situation, right? So if you, let's just say, you've had some, difficulty coming up with money to purchase a home, right? And the credit score might not be there, or you're self-employed, your income doesn't quite qualify, a lot of different reasons why people don't buy and they rent, right? And some reasons are simply because, and we see this a bigger trend with younger buyers right now, or younger people, is like, I don't want to have to fix anything.
Right.
I want it all done for me.
Sure.
So I'm fine with renting, which is fine. It's not, purchasing a home isn't not for everybody, but
absolutely,
it is the biggest wealth builder there is, period.
Yes.
End of discussion. So to get back to the original,
let's get back to the original
topic is
what were we talking about? What is a yield spread?
The yield spread. So it's the difference essentially than the base rate, and then what you're going to buy the bond at. Right?
So the base rate is at 5.5.
Correct.
And then the yield spread would be at like 8.
Well, no. Let's not put numbers on that. So, because you're going to buy these 5.5 and it's going to be costs on there, right? So the mortgage rate, a 30-year fixed mortgage, averages around 7 because the lender's got to be able to make some money. The Fed, they buy the money at 5.5. Let's just say it's 7.25, 7.5. That's the yield. That's the yield spread for the lender. Right? That's not for the average person that's buying.
So there's more yield spreads that we don't know about.
So it's a pool.
Okay.
Uniform mortgage-backed securities. So that's the 30-year. 5.5 is the 30-year uniform mortgage-backed securities. So it's a pool of all these mortgages that get Fannie, Freddie, government loans.
Sure.
They get put in there so that they're less risky.
Right.
So it's a pool of mortgages, whether billions of dollars in these pools of mortgages, right? And then you're buying into these mortgages, right?
Right.
So that's what you're buying, and that yield spread is what we're talking about in there. So like if you go on like MBS Highway, which is great. I mean, I love it. Barry Habib.
Yep.
Awesome. Talks about, the futures and, all of this stuff that is related to mortgage and, rates. And, it'll show like today it's like 98.83. Mm-hmm. Let's say 5.5 is 100, right?
Yep.
98.3 is just slightly less than 5.5, right?
Gotcha. Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. So the further down we get on that spread, the higher that interest rate goes. Okay, yeah. So it's kind of difficult to think of it this way, but usually you got to look at the 10-year treasury and really watch what that is. That's actually the better barometer per se of what the rates
not
are.
100%
No,
accurate.
it's a good indicator. Right? So if you look at that, and see what it does daily, because if it's going up, right now, I think today it was at 4.10.
Right.
4.10.
Yeah.
Right. It came down.
Yeah, because it was at 4.3, I think it reached.
I think it hit 4.34. 4.33 was the barrier, is what they were saying. It's
Okay.
Like if it breaks above 4.33 for too long, that's a very bad sign.
Right.
Okay. We've also talked about inverted yield curves. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And inverted yield curves, so that would be like the 2-year Treasury,
Mm-hmm.
the two-year UST, and then you get the 5, the 7, the 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the 30. But the 2-year is, I think it was like 5 or something like that, right? But before, it would be lower than the 10-year,
Okay.
right? So it'd be safer to buy into the 10-year for long term and so forth. When it inverts, historically, there always shows a recession after. Well, it inverted a year ago. I think
Right. It's been a while
I think it's
now.
been June of 2022 is when it inverted.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been saying recession, recession, recession. Well, we also just came out of the most money in history being printed during COVID.
Right.
So.
Well, that's what started this whole inflation thing.
Correct. There's most money in history and then lockdowns and shipping, right? So you stop companies from being able to make stuff, right? So to get the products out there, and then you gave people money to buy products, right?
Right.
So what happened is like these companies were shut down because they couldn't put workers to work. All the products goes out. Now all the businesses and distributors can raise all those prices.
Right.
So that was, they bought these prices low and made a ton of money, right?
Right.
Well, now they finally put people back to work, and guess what? Most people didn't want to go back to work. It was unsafe, right?
Sure.
Or they got so much handouts that they didn't have to go back. They made more money sitting at home than going to work, right?
Yes.
So they also created and hindsight 2020, they can't see what's going to happen, but they created this mess where a lot of people just didn't want to work anymore, or like, hey, I can go drive for DoorDash.
Right. Well, we had what did they call it? The Great Resignation.
Right.
I mean, that's what you're referring to here.
Yes. And baby boomers were like, hey, I got enough money to retire now. I'm just going to retire.
Right.
Right. And then you get, younger generation that necessarily isn't, their focus isn't like what necessarily the older generations were as far as working for a living and
it's different.
There's a different mindset. Good or bad.
The internet
right?
is here. We all want to be a YouTube influencer. No, I'm just kidding. But.
And then there's so many ways to make money online. Right?
Yes.
Specifically right now, and the younger generations are really like, hey, I can make this money online. They're making websites, and they're making. Maybe they're not making much money, but they're doing something. But they're not going to work 40 hours a week.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
So you created this time, and you got a shortage of cars and everything, commodities, goods, all this stuff got shorted, right? So you had short supplies. Well, the car companies also got smart too. It's like, well, okay, why are we building all these extra cars and having to give all these discounts out? Now we don't have to give any discounts. I came from Toyota.
Right.
So Toyota right now is like, most of the dealers said, well, I'm going to sell in orders only, for the most part. Like, I don't want to have 500 cars on my lot.
Sure.
Right. And Toyota said, okay, well, we're going to build this, and then we keep the values of these cars higher. Right. We can always, and they're making so much more money because they have less inventory. Mm-hmm. Right. The demand is still there. People still need cars. And so
they found a much more lucrative business model to run it off of. And well, that's the other thing too, coming out of all of this, car payments. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've skyrocketed.
I believe the numbers are May of 2020, the average car payment was $579. Today it is like $940.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Because rates went up, but guess what? Cars are more advanced today. right?
True.
Obviously, we have the electric cars. We have all this. But when I was doing finance, our average loan was about $16,000. It's $32,000 now. It's doubled
Right.
in the last 10 years. But specifically, it's gone way up in the last 3, 4, 5 years, right? So I was shocked. I bought a Yukon Denali for $72,000 in 2017. I just saw a Yukon Denali scrolling through on Facebook, of course, on Marketplace, $99,000. It's 30 grand 5 years later for the same truck, right?
That's nuts.
It's crazy.
And with a higher interest rate too.
Yeah. So now you see why the average car loan, and that's a huge bubble right now too.
Yep. There's a lot of bubbles coming up.
Right. The subprime car market, major bubble, right? And the repo rate. I actually needed to call my buddy and call them and see what they're seeing in the repo rates. So, on that side of it, we would be able to get a lot of people with lower credit scores financed, because if we kept our repo rate below 2%, they basically said, okay, you guys can do whatever. Once we go over 2%, now they start reining in that credit, like, whoa, time out, we can't have this, right? So it's interesting how that all works, right?
No, for sure.
The lender says, okay, you got $5,000, but you got a 480 credit score. All right, you got $5,000 down, we'll do it, right? Because the lender, the dealership was holding a repo rate of 1.2% at Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo said, okay, well, you're within our parameters. If this one goes bad, it goes bad.
Sure.
Give them the deal. Right?
Give them the deal. And I hate to say this, we're going down a rabbit hole right now.
I know.
We just got into car finance. So we're getting swinging around from the car bubble, which I think would be a good episode to do.
Right.
I'd also love to do another one on student loans, because I think that's going to be another big bubble.
Well,
yeah,
we'll go down another rabbit hole on that one here in a second.
But let's get back to right now. All the experts are saying that we'll start seeing some major dips in interest rates Q2 of 2024.
Right.
I guess, what are they? So do you know anything that's different from the prediction that they had, saying that, hey, rates are going to go down in Q3 2023? Are they using the same factors to try and determine rates going down in Q2 of 2024? I know that's a convoluted question, but
they're projecting, right? They want inflation down to 2%. I don't know how you can do that.
Right.
I simply don't know, because I do not have an Ivy League economist degree, economy degree, right?
Right.
But look at this. Companies that had to pay more for workers, right? That have to pay more for the energy to build their products, to ship their products, right? That you also, let's just say they took advantage of loan programs that came out for companies during COVID, super low interest. Maybe they bought a new building, maybe they bought new trucks, maybe they bought new equipment to make this stuff, and they didn't use cash for it. They bought them on lower interest loans.
Right.
So also they are putting cash away because of taxes. They're getting taxed more, and that's what the current administration said, that we need to tax companies more. Right. Well, those loans aren't always just fixed rate loans.
Sure.
Right? They're adjustable loans.
So and for
commercial lending.
Well, and for a lot of folks out there that don't know this, fixed rate loans are way more rare than an adjustable rate loan. Homes, those are really one of the only things that we have a fixed rate on.
Homes and cars.
Yeah. But everything else, that rate adjusts, and it adjusts with
revolving. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
credit cards.
Your home equity lines of credit.
Sure.
5% 2 years ago. Now it's at 9%. Depending on what your LTV, whatever it is, right? So these loan payments are higher So you tell me how keeping interest rates high is going to actually reduce inflation, right? So this is, I know I'm getting too far and probably, again, out of the weeds, into the weeds into this a bit, but I believe the inflation, the dollar amount that we're going to be paying for these goods are here to stay. So why don't we not create incentives for people to go back to work more? For the younger generations, the companies have to pay more, so they have to be profitable. We have to say, in my opinion, we have to make sure that the companies are not going to get taxed to death, right? Yep. And in my opinion, you bring the rates down, because the housing housing and car markets are the two biggest indicators of recessionary times.
Yep.
Because what goes into a car? What goes into a house? When they're building a house, what goes into it?
Are you talking about like the building supplies? Yeah.
Yes. All the materials. Who makes this? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Right? All these different companies have laid off, whether it's, I wouldn't say necessarily logging companies at this point, but pretty much everywhere, right? These companies have all contracted, right? And most companies right now are saying, well, we have no plans to hire.
Right.
There's no, we're not hiring. So, you know how they look at ADP? ADP is one of the biggest payroll systems out there.
Yeah.
Okay. I just saw an interesting, article yesterday. LinkedIn just said literally last week, 5%. They saw a decrease week over week of 5% less job listings. So why are they looking at ADP, which is past tense, people getting laid off, hours on the payroll, weekly payrolls? Why aren't we looking at the companies like Indeed and LinkedIn and that are actually posting these jobs?
Right.
So, another coworker literally they were supposed to close on their loan this week. They managed to make it work, but the wife got laid off last week.
Oh my God.
Right? Had to get gifts from mom and dad, had to jump through a bunch of hoops, pay off some debt so they could qualify under one income on the house. They did it. They made it work. Sure. But they almost couldn't buy a new house. Right?
They almost couldn't do it.
And she had no idea it was coming. Monday morning, gets to work. Sorry, we're letting 100 people go today. You're out, right? Oof. And the tech industry, AI came out, right?
Yeah.
All these companies are like, well, we can do so much more with less people. Right. Elon came into Twitter, which is now X, and got rid of 50%?
I think it was actually more than that.
That was 50%.
Yes.
And I think they're running at like 30% of what they used to be, something like that. And then once they did that, every other company did too. I mean, Meta's down. Like all these big companies are down. Like all these tech people are down. So, even last year, going into last winter, I think looking at Walmart's one of the biggest like seasonal job.
Yeah.
Because they stay open. They got the workers for Christmas.
Yep.
And I think they normally hire 30,000 extra part-time employees. I think this is winter 2022. They either cut it down to 10,000, I think it was. So they just 10,000. So it'd be interesting to see what happens this year.
Yeah.
Because I think the next few months, again, the Fed talking about running down the road 65 miles an hour, just watching the rearview mirror, we're going to see a lot of numbers come out this next quarter. So Q3 is what the Fed is saying, but they're also saying we could see, another increase in. We haven't determined that 2024 is out from increases yet.
Right.
So
that would be a pretty hard promise to make, though.
Right.
Right. I mean, let's not put all the doom and gloom on there, because historically, when the Fed says, hey, we are within one or two, right?
I don't think they will. Me personally, and not to be doom and gloom, because there's a lot of people that have jobs out there that, could be potentially, but, obviously looking at LoanNet and some of the people that work for us.
Yeah.
One already got let go, right? From a tech standpoint from their company.
Not from us, from their other.
We are actually growing, but
yes.
Another one's like, she's like, I don't know. I got plenty of time to work right now, so I'm assuming it's coming down any minute. Right. So you're going to see, I think the problem is that this is going to go that other direction super fast. And when it does, reactionary time by the Fed again. Right. So I do see that the weakening of rates this year, I don't see like this huge drop off. And the Fed could fix it all and just say, hey, we're going to buy some mortgage-backed securities. I mean, they're already talking about, this new strain of COVID that's coming out in September.
Right. That has been.
It's almost like it's a release date. Hey, we got a release date that's going to come out with this new strain of COVID. That
has been an internet rumor, yes.
and so forth. But it's a reality. I mean, you walk into stores now and you're seeing they're selling masks again like it's crazy.
Right.
So again, there's a lot of rumors per se.
Yep.
What happens next month? What happens October?
Besides my least favorite holiday.
Halloween?
Yeah, I don't like it.
Really?
I'm not a fan of Halloween. Just never have been.
You get scared easy?
No, it's not even that. It's just, I don't know. Like, I've never been a big fan of candy, I guess. So I never got the appeal of that. But that's just me. Everybody else can go and enjoy it. That's fine. It's just not my favorite.
Right. Well, this is another scary thing that's going to happen, which is student loans have all been in deferment.
Oh yeah, student loans.
Years.
That
3+ years. 2020.
That one.
I think April of 2020 they went deferment. May of 2020.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yep. And now they are finally going back into payment October 1st.
And I'm wondering.
I believe it's October 1st.
And I really am wondering how the market is going to react to that.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people that are not used to paying those loans.
Or never have paid them.
Or never have paid them, and they're going to have a $200 to $1,000 payment staring them in the face every month.
You have, over the last 6 months too, or the last year over year, the credit card debt has skyrocketed.
Yes.
So between credit card debt and student loan debt, we're almost $1 trillion each. Well, it's trillion, 1.3 each, something like that.
Yeah.
And credit card debt now hit $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Let's just say when rates were low and you didn't have a great credit score, you were paying 17, 18, 19% on your credit card. Now what are you paying? 27?
20, yeah, more. Yeah.
29?
Much
the
more.
Max rate that you can get based on your score. So what did that do? Right? So and again, they are so reactionary. The pendulum has to swing so far one way versus the next. I think the next 6 months will be the biggest telling what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And at some point they're going to be like, oh, we got to print more money, got to buy some more mortgage-backed securities. And once they do that, that's going to tank. But this is a real estate podcast, so what does that mean for us? The people that are waiting to buy, as soon as and the inventory isn't going to come on fast enough, and the prices are going to stay higher in most areas. Now, not every area,
but most areas.
Florida has way more homes available
than they have in a while.
Right. And so forth. So there's a lot of different areas, a lot of different factors in it. Ultimately, in the end, we went way off topic and really discussing what bond yield.
Yeah, we're gonna have to retitle this one to Brett and Brandon go down a rabbit hole.
Just talking about the Fed and probably I'll get canceled because I talk about the Fed too much. I just don't. Me personally don't understand the thought process, in keeping rates high as long as they do without looking at down the road versus just, these are the numbers it says from the GDP. These are the payroll numbers. This is what, and there's always more to it, and you can kind of manipulate those numbers how you want it. When they, Q2, they came back with 300,000 less jobs than what the original number estimates were.
Right.
That's 25,000 jobs a month. So like in Q2 when that came out, or when that report came out, they go, we have a way better economy, blah, 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 blah. Well, 2 months later, they're saying, we had to revise those numbers down.
Right.
So what did that do to the market in that short term? Certain things went up, certain things went down, right? It's like how they manipulate the numbers.
Absolutely. With that being said, Brandon doesn't know why increasing rates is going to help stop inflation. If you have an idea, you should let us know. You
and
should
I'm
let
sure
us know.
there's going to be some very, intelligent people and intellectuals will say this is the reason why and this is the reason why.
For sure.
I'm on the ground level of it, and I'm looking at what my buyers are going through, and I'm looking at other industries and what they're going through. And you can say all this stuff you want. It still comes back to what is really happening in front of us.
Right. What is
Because
happening?
our industry is being decimated.
Oh my God.
Our old company had to sell.
Yep.
Right?
They got bought. Yeah, they had to sell off. I mean, the real estate agents, we're going to lose 50% of them.
We're going to lose
50% of lenders.
Right. And people just going to have to give it up. Like, I cannot afford to pay my bills anymore.
Yeah.
Because I have no money coming in. If you're a lender, you're real estate, you are 100% commission. In real estate, they're self-employed all the way, right?
Yep.
And if they have no money coming in, what are they going to do? Likely they'll maybe keep their license, but they're going to have to do something different. And some of them are just completely like, I'm over it. I can't do this again. I
Right.
won't do it. Blah blah blah. Because they're also getting attacked too on their side. There's a big push right now, and I think one state passed it. It's a state in the Northeast that passed it. The buyer has to pay the buyer's agent's commission.
Yes, I believe that was Massachusetts.
Is it Massachusetts? Is that or New Jersey?
Yeah, it's which is going to.
So now you just added more closing costs.
And a big
Right.
chunk of closing costs.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you're talking about your first time home buyer. My goodness. I mean, you're adding on at least another 2.5%, 3%. I guess it's going to be whatever the buyer's agent decides to charge.
It sounds like Fannie and Freddie are probably going to say, hey, you can go from seller pays of 3% to like 4 or 5 or 6.
Right.
Percent, and guess what? It's just getting tacked on top of it, and it's getting, essentially financed in because you're just saying, okay, well, we need to add another 3% on top of the purchase price of $450, so you're adding another, $20,000 to that.
So the seller is still going to be paying
the seller is
for it.
contributing to pay for that.
Right.
It's
So we move it around on paper, but the seller's still going to be paying for it.
But they're netting a bigger number regardless.
True.
Right? But it's still got to appraise for that. What if it doesn't appraise?
They're
trying to make it that way, but the closing costs are going to go higher.
The closing costs are going to go higher, and
if this comes to fruition,
if it comes to fruition, and I think with that too, that was actually going to drive home prices down. I really do think it will, because you are going. I mean, first-time home buyers still not as prevalent as they used to be. They still make up 20% of the market. Right. I mean, when you and a lot of times these folks don't have a lot of money, and if they have to get that through closing concessions and they can't, or they don't have the money to pay, I mean, you're going to lose another 20% of your buyer pool. I think that could actually have an impact on home prices. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think there's an impact for sure. You're not wrong. What is that? It depends on the level of inventory, period.
Yeah, which is low just about everywhere.
It's the lowest we've ever been, and we have way more people. I mean, they're finally millennials, and that generation are starting to look like, hey, I do want to start a family and buy a home, right? So, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they weren't even really saying that. But the last couple of years, all of a sudden, now that mindset is coming through.
That mindset is coming through. All right. So, well, hey, Brandon, we are going way over time on this. We are going to have to change the title, but that's okay. Guys, if you really enjoyed what you saw here today, we did go down some rabbit holes. But I'll
love
really
to go down these rabbit holes with you. Just call me up.
Yes, absolutely. If you thought that this was entertaining, if you thought that you learned something from this, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Ask us questions. We're here for you guys. If you have any questions about mortgage, getting pre-approved, if you need a good real estate agent, please let us know. We'd love to hook you up.
And just to add to that, yes, we've talked about like this, but the main thing is the pent-up demand, and that's why a lot of investors are still buying today. Mm-hmm. People with means are buying today, and first-time home buyers are buying today. If you are one of those people that are simply waiting because you think that there's going to be a crash or this or that, or you're just waiting for interest rates to go down, I do truly believe that you're going to miss out. Period. You're going to be paying, if you're renting right now, you're going to be paying more in rent, and the price of homes specifically in our area, the Metro Twin Cities market, is not going to decrease in value. The pent up demand is there. It's real. And if we see rates in the lower 6s and 5s, you're going to see the flood back in, and that the inventory is just still going to be a problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great thing to end on. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.